Let me ask you about reconciliation.
Yeah.
And the Trump administration is pushing members of the Republicans very hard to get one big bill passed. Republicans want to extend the tax cuts from 2017. They say if they are not extended and made permanent, everybody's taxes are going to go up. Your thoughts?
Okay, so I do want to be clear. They want to take what happened in 2017 and double down. So it's not just like, oh, we're going to continue on. It is actually that they want to go even further, okay? So one of the things that...
I'm sorry, are you talking about...
on the tax cuts.
Right, but are you talking about President Trump saying no tax on tips, no tax on Social
I'm
Security,
talking about,
no tax on overtime?
I'm talking about for the 1%ers. Those are the only people that really benefited. I'm not going to say they're the only ones that benefited from 2017.
Wow.
But the top earners is how I will phrase it.
Okay.
The top earners are the ones that benefited the most from the 2017 tax cuts. And now they want to basically give them even bigger benefits is the way that I would characterize it. Because what we're doing is there's 4.5 trillion.
Yes.
I want to say is the number.
Tax cuts, that's
right. And so the issues that we have is number one. We know, let me make it really simple because I know people are going to watch this. When it comes down to the money that we have in our own homes, right? So I'm a single woman. And I've got my salary. So that's how much money I've got coming in. That's how much I've got to work with. So when I'm deciding on my bills and what they're gonna look like, how big my house is, whether or not I have a car note, those things, I am basing that on my one salary. Now let's say I go and get married and now there's another additional income that I have. And so now it's like, oh, well, you can afford a bigger house. You can afford maybe a bigger car, that kind of thing. So the house and the car, in this circumstance is our Social Security. It's Medicaid, it's Medicare. You can afford those things when you say, you know what, let's bring in a little bit of additional income. Let's go ahead and get somebody else in on this party. Well, what we're having is right now, they're saying, no, those top earners, we don't want you to have to pay anything. And the only way that we can pay for that so that you don't have to pay your, what I would consider to be fair share, is if we give up our Social Security, if we give up our Medicaid, if we give up our Medicare.
I haven't seen any of that. I mean, the president has said very clearly he's not cutting Social Security, he's not cutting Medicare. And as far as Medicaid, from what Republicans tell me, they're not cutting benefits to pregnant women, poor women, disabled, but they want able-bodied people to get back to work and get off of that. So what's your reaction to that?
That's probably the only acceptable way to say it. So
but that's
I'm sure
what they've said.
I'm sure that that's.
You're not buying it, essentially.
No, I'm not. I mean, and it's not even just you don't have to believe what I say. Look at the House budget resolution that passed. The House budget resolution that passed was all about determining where these cuts were going to come from. So the Republicans kept going out saying, listen, they keep talking about Medicaid and that we're going to cut Medicaid. But there was no mention of Medicaid in the budget resolution, and there wasn't. They are telling the truth about that. But what they are being deceitful about is they said from Energy and Commerce, which is one of our committees, they said you have to find 880, I think it's 880.
That's correct.
There is nowhere else to find it. So I don't get it. Like the math doesn't math for me. If there's nowhere else to find it, but in Medicaid, then yeah, you can do your double talk and say that you're not going to do it, but the reality is that you all voted for the bill to do it. I mean, the budget office told us like where it would come from. So we know, same thing when it comes to SNAP benefits. They said find $240 billion somewhere within agriculture. The only place that you can pull it from is from SNAP benefits. You have to take them. So this isn't us just doing things to be partisan. I mean, at the end of the day, it either is or isn't going to happen. So one of us is telling the truth and one of us is not. But based on the votes that they have taken and the reason that we have voted against some of this stuff is because of these cuts. And I can tell you, Jack, we were on the floor and they held us on the floor for an hour because we had our first vote and the next vote. They did not know if they were going to have the votes. So they held us there. The last I heard is that Donald Trump was on the phone with Victoria Sparks of Indiana and trying to convince her to vote for the House budget resolution. And so next thing you know, they said, never mind, we're canceling the next vote, and they let us go. So we then leave. Within about 15 minutes, they call us back and said, hey, we've got to do this vote. So I'm like, oh, they're trying to catch us to where we're not there so that they can actually pass it. Well, ultimately, they ended up getting the votes. I guess he called enough people. But these are people, like when you're talking about a rural state like Indiana, she understands what's about to happen to her constituents. This is going to hit rural America, urban America again. This is right versus wrong, good versus evil. This is not a partisan issue. No, you heard his right hand say, what did he say about Social Security? I know you know. I know I'm not supposed to ask you a question, but I know you know the answer. What Elon said was that Social Security was nothing but a Ponzi scheme. Does that sound like someone who is fond of the idea of Social Security, or is this someone who is trying to tarnish what Social Security is as they get ready to try to take it out?
So you're expecting that. That's what you think is going to happen.
I think, not even think, the chair of the budget committee in the House said this is a good start, but we are going after Social Security next. That's what came out of his mouth. And he is the chair. He's a Republican chair in the House. You can go and run the tape up. Nobody has to believe me. C-SPAN is available. You can go and find it, right? So I think that they are going to get some pushback. I think that's why Republicans are not wanting to do their town halls, because they are starting to find out, just like they have gone after our veterans. This used to be the party of supporting veterans. And who's losing their jobs is the federal government. So many veterans, because about a third of our workforce, they are veterans, right? Who is it that they went after in the CR? They cut approximately, I don't remember the number now, but there was money for the burn pits. They did not make sure that money for those that actually suffered from and the legislation had been passed, that money is gone. They did not include that money in this continuing resolution. That was cut out. But you know what did happen? Department of Defense ended up with more money. So they gave more money to Department of Defense that has not been able to pass a budget or pass a clean audit in the last 6 or 7 audits, but they then took money away from our veterans. And you know who gets their contracts from Department of Defense? Okay, I'll help you out. It's Elon. That is where he gets the vast majority of his contracts from the federal government. So somehow we found more money to put on the defense side of the ledger, but at the same time, those that have housing vouchers, we won't have the money for at least 32,000 existent housing vouchers. Now, mind you, this isn't taking into consideration all the people that are losing their jobs, whether they're private or government employees, that now will need to get some type of housing subsidy. It won't be there because the people that already have subsidies are losing it.